Happy Thanksgiving. So I'm going to run you through my classroom website real quick. Granted, if I had a real classroom, it would be tailored more towards them. And my subscribe and contact here up at the top. Um, Parents could subscribe to that so they could get updates. But then my contact information would clearly be my contact information for school. So if we click on blog, it's going to bring us down to my 2 units. So one was a 6th grade figurative language unit. Here is my unit overview. Culturally responsive pedagogy for this. Throughout the unit or throughout the lessons, I had a writing assignment that the students were able to express themselves. I did Mad Libs that the students were able to express themselves, and then an advertisement piece that the students got into group and were able to bring in their cultures and language, and they were able to show me and demonstrate what they know. For my first lesson, it's simile. So multiple means of represent. Here are my lesson objectives, I'm sorry. And then universal design for learning. So the multiple means of representation, or finding different ways for students to get the information. This was simply by doing a note sheet. The students had it right in front of them. It was on the board displayed to them. We were having a conversation back and forth about what the definitions were. Students were able to come up on the board and write the answers, and then they were able to use their tablets to look up the correct information or examples of similes, metaphors as we were going through. The multiple means of expression. So when taking notes, I would ask the students input on what the definition is, and then the students had to create these examples. So they were able to look them up on their tablet and find what appeased them, and then they were able to tell me. And then also under expression, them using the advertisement, they were able to create their own, which helped them understand what the meaning was and context between similes are. And also they were able to bring in their own knowledge into this piece. And then engagement. At the beginning of the lesson, I would show them different commercials or magazine ads that had similes in them. Even if you turn on the TV now and watch a commercial, you would most likely find that there was some sort of simile on an ad. They are very common. So I thought that would be fun, and then they were able to present this ad to the whole class. And then next we did metaphors and idioms. So here's my lesson objective. I'm not going to read it. It's simply the same or similar to the similes. But then the multiple means of representation, again, they'll have that note sheet. They'll be able to come up to the board. They see, hear, and they're saying. So they have different ways that they're retaining the information, and they're also writing it. The multiple means of expression, so students are able to demonstrate their knowledge in different ways by taking notes. They can create the examples again like we did with similes, but then in this lesson they're creating a story using idioms and metaphors. So not only is this fun for the students, but it gives them an opportunity to express what they know individually, and then they would be able to come up and share their stories if they wanted. And then multiple means of engagement. So how did I engage the students? When starting this lesson, I would do a Mad Libs and fill it with idioms and metaphors that the students could fill in. And this would not only get them talking and having a conversation of what we're learning, but also it would spark their interest right away. And then coming down, we have our last one, which is the review. And then again, the lesson objective is most likely the same or similar. I'm sorry, not the same. But for representation, again, we're going to review that note sheet. We're going to go over it. We're going to find these examples, find what works for the students. And then another thing for this lesson, I chose to use music, and each student had to they had the lyric sheet in front of them, they were listening to the song, and the lyrics were up on the board. And the students had to highlight or write down all of their what similes they found, what metaphors they found, yada yada yada. So that was fun because the students were actually engaged. And there were different ways of representing the material. For multiple means of expression, while listening to the lyrics of their songs, the students would have to highlight, so they were demonstrating their knowledge to me of what they know. And then engagement, so the students honestly were hooked listening to the songs. They were kind of bummed to know that it was Katy Perry, but again, it was school appropriate, and that was most important. But they listened to oh my goodness, Katy Perry's song and Life is a Highway by Rascal Flatts, which has awesome representation of figure of speech. And a lot of the students went above and beyond and found figures of speech that we didn't talk about, so that was really cool. And then I have some fun little hashtags. If you scroll down, I'm going to show you my unit plan for kindergarten alphabet. At the top, this one was important to me because this was designed for a pull-out group for a special education setting, but it would work for a review for small groups or even a whole class setting. You could do it too. Maybe not some of it, but you could tailor it to those needs. So here's my overview. My culturally responsive pedagogy. So this was hard since it was only a short period of time, but my kindergarten students love to color. Most kindergartners love to color. So giving this opportunity to them was awesome. And this allows them to kind of be free in how they color. They're not told they need to color the K a certain way or they need to color the J in orange. No, they were able to color it however they wanted. And I demonstrated them that. I did my own paper and I made some fun designs on my letters, and they took off and they did it too. They wanted to do their own thing, which was awesome. I love seeing that. I love when kids get expressive like that. And throughout the activity that they did, they were able to use whatever writing utensils, so markers or crayons or pencils, colored pencils, whatever they wanted to show their knowledge to me. I'm only going to run through the first lesson and then I'll kind of show you this other lessons. Because this was a special ed setting, I wanted to keep it the same. These students are used to the same routine every day. So I found that important, especially because I did teach these lessons to my students. They needed that. They needed everything to stay the same. So for my lesson objectives, students will be able to recognize the uppercase letter G when given a variety of letters. Going into teaching this unit, and after I turned it in, I did realize that the students did know the lowercase, but the teacher was really focusing on uppercase because a lot of them had issues with writing it and identifying it. But when I started getting into lowercase, the students were able to recognize it, and they did do well with it. It was just separate from combining all the letters. So multiple means of representation, again, means finding different ways for students to get the information that you are giving them. So the students had different ways to identify the letter for me and get this information. I laid out a bunch of letters and only one of them were the correct letter. So in this case it was G, and the student had to identify G. As we go along for G, H, I, and J, H was the most difficult letter to find for the students. But so I represented that letter G by writing it on the board, and then they had to find it. And then they had the opportunity to write on the board, which for kindergartners is huge. They love it. So they wrote the letter G on the board, uppercase and lowercase, because that's what they wanted. One thing with this that was cool, one student has very poor muscle tone, so getting the marker open was difficult for the student. But him and I worked together, and without the other students like making a fuss about it, we got the marker open, and then he was able to do it on his own, which was huge. And then the students for representation had to complete the worksheet, which included tracing, coloring, cutting and pasting, and writing the letters. So they had multiple ways to see the letter. And then for expression, students were able to demonstrate their knowledge in different ways. One thing that I really liked that I came up with on the fly was the students had to give me the sound of the letter and one word that the letter, like the word starts with the letter, I guess. So for G, one kid's name was George. So I go g g g, and the student corrected me. He goes, but J. I was like, okay. So he explained it to me. He goes, my name is George, but G can have both sounds, which awesome. I wasn't expecting a kindergartner in the setting that I was in to get that. So I let each of the other students come up with their words, and we did this for every letter. And that showed to me that they were recognizing the sound with the letter in front of them. For engagement, so in a special ed classroom or like a pull-out setting, since there were only 3 kiddos, I wanted to make it personable. So, especially because they haven't seen me real often. So to do this, I started talking about how was your weekend? What are you going to do this weekend? How are your classes going? Just something to like make them have a conversation with me, so I get to know their likes and interests and what they like to do. If I were doing this for a whole group setting, I probably wouldn't start out with how was your day? I might start with a funny video that has to do with the letter G, or play like popcorn or around the world with like a ball that they could say one word that starts with G or whatever. But in this setting, I wanted to get to know the students and show them that I was interested in their lives rather than not. But that's how I got the students engaged. They loved it, and then they got right to work. So that's the same throughout my lessons. Again, I have these cute little hashtags, hashtag kindergarten, alphabet, and special education. And then people can leave comments if they want, contact, and then that map, but that would be of a school. So yeah, this is it, but thank you. Happy Thanksgiving again.